after many technical difficulties. Much appreciated. Thank you, Balthazar. So my name's Emmet Coleman. I go under the DJ name Senhor Santos. Uh, it was the most Portuguese name for the least Portuguese-looking man, so that's essentially why I did it. So today, I don't know where I'm going to take this. Really, I'm going to talk a little bit about vinyl culture, a little bit about myself and my musical journey and how I got to where I was. And maybe a few stories about some of the records that I'm going to put on. So I'm going to play a few records kind of throughout. We can have a little listen. I won't play them all the way through because they're quite long. So just to introduce myself, I'm from Cork in Ireland. I started DJing maybe about 5 years ago. And my musical influences growing up, I had none really. My parents weren't really into music. Like all I had was I had one good album, which was The Stranglers' Greatest Hits, and that was it. My parents they put on the radio, but it didn't really matter what was on. But it was funny, as I got older, my uncle actually gave me a lot of his records, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And I was listening to them over the last kind of number of years, and I only started to appreciate them recently. And it just made me question, it's like, where do you get your influences from when you're younger? Is it totally about who you're around? Because at the time I didn't like them. It was a lot of like Frank Sinatra and jazz and things I suppose sometimes it takes you to be a little bit older to understand them. So I'm going to put on a few of the records that he gave me. So the first one, I'm going to start it off with something Irish, which is by a band called Scullion. Now, it's not very normal Scullion, but I think it's a beautiful tune. I swear, DJ.
We've said it all. There's a rain cloud over our love. There's a cold night calling. Every obligation canceled. Instead of talking, let's walk. Instead of talking, let's walk. Come on, Carol, there's a fancy dress.
Sorry, Balthazar.
We can go as missionaries. Come on, Carol, there's a fancy dress. We can go as missionaries. Bring in our credentials. We can't be just ourselves. Instead of talking, let's walk. Come on, Carol. Oh, instead of talking, let's walk. You say we could be friends, real good friends. You say we could be friends. I've got good friends. Let's go. Oh, Carol is an emptiness. I'm fighting up the city with your red dress, red dress. There's nothing there, 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 there's nothing.
It's the dub version. It's a dub version. Yeah, so that was one of the records my uncle gave me. But he would have played this when I was growing up, and I actually didn't like it at all. But it's funny, the stuff you're around as a young guy, even if you don't kind of understand it, it definitely gets into the psyche. So another one that he would have played quite a lot is a guy called George Benson. George Benson used to be he was a really renowned
Had a dime, and our dreams seem a million miles away. But we made it, baby, facing the bad times with a smile. Here we are, and we're growing stronger day by day. 'Cause we got love times love. It's always there for us to share. And girl, it sure feels good to know you're by my side. 'Cause with the two hearts that beat as one forever. With the love times love to keep us satisfied every night. So my lady, whisper the words I love to hear. Cuddle up and I'll make you feel alright. 'Cause I need you, baby, to carry me on through all the years. So come on, baby, close the door and dim the lights. 'Cause we got love times love. It's always there for us to share. Love times love to keep us satisfied. And there ain't no one in this world tonight can change my point of view. So come
So that was George Benson, Love by Love. So that's kind of some of the stuff that I would have been around when I was with my uncle. So yeah, I didn't really get it then. But even just listening to it right there, it's an incredible piece of music. I think as you get older, you definitely appreciate it more. Some people appreciate it when they're younger, but I certainly didn't. So as I started, kind of when I came into my teenage years, I was watching a lot of like MTV, and when MTV actually had music videos and stuff. So from that was my first introduction to electronic music, not in a DJing side of things, but in terms of production side of things. So I was listening to the Chemical Brothers and Prodigy and anything that was on MTV Dance. Didn't really understand what it was at the time, or even like where it was played, and then like what kind of atmosphere it was played around. So when I got to kind of 18, 19, I really started getting into electronic music and house music. And then obviously that's the age you start going out as well. So there was a few places in Cork you could go to, but like a lot of the better ones are kind of a little bit older. So it was mostly just kind of listening at home and then showing your friends or whatever. In the car, yeah, exactly, just driving around in the car. So then as we got a little bit older, and I started working with my cousin, who was a wedding photographer. So there was a lot of times that I was editing for hours and hours and hours, and he started introducing me to things like the Essential Mix. If none of you have ever heard of the Essential Mix, it's like the most important electronic music mix series. Everyone has kind of done it. So he started showing me all these little kind of different bits, and I started seeing the culture more. And he was talking a lot about how it used to be back in the older days. So there was a really important club in Cork's music scene called Sir Henry's. So he was kind of telling me stories of that, and he had some pictures, and it just got me more and more interested in it. And then he introduced me to a guy called Kerry Chandler. And Kerry Chandler has a big affiliation with Cork, as Sir Henry's was like his favourite place to play. So Kerry started playing in Cork kind of nearly every year. So he's like, no, you have to go see Kerry Chandler. So I was like, okay. And for us at the time, house music was a little bit more kind of commercial, but it wasn't like that. The bit of kind of like the house music I'm about to show you now. What I'm about to show you is kind of, it's quite deep and it's quite jazzy, and it's a very New York kind of type of house music. So I'll just give you a little blast of it. And I actually remember the first time hearing this. was with my buddy. I think it was with Bree.
Tell me why every pop diva has to have a dance remix. But for some reason, house is still considered like the armpit of music or something. House is house. So tell me why some of the best people I know, best DJs I know, best producers I know, still in the bedroom. But then you have some superstar DJs that can't even turn on one machine. House is house. Egos get way out of control. I never knew. I still don't understand. House is house. Here's another thing. Every week in the dance music business, there's 48,000. You heard me, 48,000 releases, digital. House is house.
So that was Kerry Chandler, and I think what Kerry Chandler kind of introduced me to after what we were listening to before that was very produced kind of stuff. I suppose you'd kind of call it like tech house, but he introduced me to kind of a swing in music, and you can hear it's a drum kit, and you can hear it's a bass, and you can hear the keys, especially when you see interviews with him and stuff. He's just super passionate about it. So he was quite important in changing how I looked at electronic music. And then the most inspirational thing for me then was so around that time then I started buying records. Not an over amount, but yeah, a bit. And then there's a party in Cork called Sunday Times. So Sunday Times is now what I know to be kind of a purist-ish party where really good sound system, really good selections, really good DJs. And I remember walking up there and hearing Ain't No Mountain High Enough being played. But what was the version? It was a Patrick Adams produced version. So that, I didn't know that you could play that kind of music at 12 o'clock at night to a packed bar. You go in and you hear these like soaring vocals, and the room is packed and it's still rocking. And it's not just a kick, and it's not just electronic music. You can actually mix this electronic music in and out of other stuff. And that's that was the most influential thing to me in how I made selections. So after that, it kind of changed how I listened to buying records. So instead of just buying something that was quote unquote like normal house, it kind of opened me up to kind of a few different things where house can have different elements to it, kind of like this track. So yeah, tracks like that kind of changed what I thought you could play on a dance floor from our younger experiences of going to certain nights. When it was all quite stylized, and the people that were playing it was all very one-dimensional, and it's just something that I don't mind going to like just a full techno night or whatever it is, but I think when you can mix it up and put in different genres and be eclectic with it, it's a really beautiful thing. So I was about 22, 23, and I really started getting into buying vinyl. And for me, I think it's very difficult to understand why vinyl people get so obsessed with it unless you actually buy it yourself. Personally, I think it is still the best format. CDs came and went, tapes came and went. MP3s are here, but you don't physically own anything. When you go in and buy a record, you have a tactile thing, you have a physical thing, and you have it in your hand. I think that's a really powerful thing. I think it's a very social way of discovering music as well, because when you go into a record store, you go to a market, whatever it is, if you're buying records from someone, that person is really into music. And you can just meet the person, you can have a 2, 3, 4 hour conversation with them, no problem whatsoever. And they can show you some amazing music and open you up to some amazing things. And when you go into a record store, you have it all laid out in front of you. You can go into all these different sections that you may not have ever gone to, and you discover records that you would never ever think you'd understand, or sorry, you'd never find. And one thing that has kind of died out with the death of like physical formats, except for records, is that B-sides have kind of gone. So back in the day, your B-side was super, super important, but these days, there's just no physical things actually made. So people made some amazing tracks for the B-side, which was just kind of, you could be a bit more experimental, I suppose, or it was just a good track that was never going to make an A-side, but sometimes it can be better than the first. So this is the George Benson track that I showed you guys earlier. This is actually the other side of it. It's called Off Broadway. So I think people suffer because you don't get to experience these B-sides anymore, because it's so, you can pick so much and everything is pushed towards you on the internet. Yeah, I think it's a sad thing that B-sides aren't important anymore. Some amazing music came on the flip side. People could be experimental. People release stuff they didn't think was good. Actually turned out to be better than the single. And I think people just like owning things. I like owning these records. It's not like just a playlist online where it doesn't really exist. And I think record stores, just as online forums can be, record stores have been bringing people together for years. People from different genres of music who'd never really combine or talk. In Cork, there's a record store called Bunker Vinyl. It opened up like 3 years ago. 3 years ago? About 3 years ago. Now, I've no idea is there any correlation, but Cork's music scene has gone mental since that place opened. I don't know if it's anything to do with Jan, but all the people, the one thing that they do have in common is a lot of those people go into Jan, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. So when you get to talk to one of these guys who, first of all, has life experience, absolute gentleman of a man, and just has such a passion for music, you can't but get infected by it when you listen to him speak. And I think that's lost a little bit, where people don't have to go into a record store, they just go online. It's staying at home. It's quite antisocial. It can also be quite sad. Another thing of records is you get stuff that maybe didn't get much airplay when it first came out, just like this record. This record came out in 1979. It's called Guardian Angels. And when it came out, it was a little bit of success, but not majorly. And then it got discovered again probably 6-7 years ago at this age, and it got what's called a repress. So when the record has already been pressed or been pressed before, someone comes along, they find a master tapes, or they find some way of pressing again, and it gets like a new lease of life, which you don't get. You can get it from the internet as well, but actually owning that record then is nice. So just a little backstory on this song. This was at a time when New York was absolutely broke. The city was bankrupt, and going on the subway was extraordinarily dangerous, especially for people at night. So they had this kind of half vigilante, half volunteer group called the Guardian Angels were set up. And these guys just help people on the subway stay safe, essentially. So this was a track that came out of it, kind of tells the story a little bit. And the sound effects you hear in the background are actually taken from, or soundscapes taken from the New York subway.
There's not a badge or a uniform, just broken lights. But it's alright. It's alright. Don't have to worry no more, 'cause the guardian angels watching over me. The guardian angels.
So yeah, just a little example of how vinyl records can give something a new lease of life. That was released originally over 40 years ago. And maybe without vinyl, that would never have been seen again. And that would have been an awful shame. Because that's a lovely, lovely record. Sorry, that I actually said the other, that was one produced by Patrick Adams. Same guy who produced Last Night the DJ Saved My Life. Little bit of information for you. So since I moved over here, my taste has changed a little bit just by the influences again that were around me. What is the crack with Brazilian music? Why is it so good? It's just, it's fucked. It's So this is Emmet. This is actually a track I bought before I got over here. Honestly, I did. But it's just incredible. I think there's a certain feeling to Brazilian music that I do not get from any other genre. It's even when it's trying to be sad, there's still a little bit of beauty. There's always a bit of beauty, and there's always happiness in it, which is a very hard thing to find. Just got tinges of sadness to it, tinges of happiness, and it's always danceable. Regardless of the song from Brazil, it's always danceable. That was a song by Joyce called, oh thank God it's in English, Summertime. So I'm going to play one more for you. One amazing thing about buying records in Portugal is that you've so many influences here. From all the colonies, from all over the world, you're attached to Europe, unlike Ireland, and it's just incredible spectrum of music from here. So this is actually the first record that I bought when I came over here, and it's actually I think it's my favorite record I've ever bought. Duro Negro. background. Yeah, and this guy's second name is Mick Mahan. So this is the last one for me. Thank you so much for listening to me, guys. Much appreciated.
Levo pra todos meus santos flores de acácia.
Actually, one more mistake.
Amanhã peço pra toda a gente que me estima. Amanhã peço pro novo dia que virá. Amanhã vou. Amanhã peço ao meu lembrar que faça com que eu volte a morar na terra amada que me viu nascer. Quero chegar de madrugada para ver o sol raiar. Quero chegar de madrugada hoje pra ninguém ver se eu chorar. Quero chegar de madrugada hoje pra ninguém ver se eu chorar. Vou andar por aí com meu violão, vou a mutamba, tomo uma chimbombo qualquer. Por macunha naque, sou igual a toda a gente. Na linha da terra nova, só paro lá no Boseque. Com a minha gente, entre mofete e conversa. E de madrugada, com catembe, com cabuíta. Zague, 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 zaga sua terra aí. Zague, 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 zaga sua terra aí. Zague, 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 zaga sua terra aí. Zague, 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 zague.
So I'll leave it there, lads. Thank you very much for listening to me. Shouts to my mum if she's looking. She'd love it. Thanks, guys.